If the Atlanta Falcons want to beat the New England Patriots, then their best players are going to have to show up and step up.
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, everyone, to another illustrious episode of the Locked On Falcons podcast, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward, Mazda, Move, and Be Moved. So on today's episode, we are joined by none other than Jarvis Davis of Locked On Sports Atlanta. We'll be talking all about sort of keys to victory for this Falcon team in Week 9. What does this team need to get right, in terms of their get back in the win column? We'll talk about both sides of the ball. We'll touch upon a little bit on, maybe Rich McKay's recent appearance on 680 The Fan, which, got some people in a tizzy. So we'll touch on that as well. But for those of you that are, not quite everydayers, meaning that you don't make this podcast your first listen each and every day, how could you? I should introduce myself. I am your humble host, Aaron Freeman, aka Mr. AKA, and I've been covering the Atlanta Falcons for almost 2 decades, formerly at falcfans.com, RIP. Still going strong, and I appreciate each and every one of you that have made the correct life choice and become everydayers of this podcast, meaning that you make it your first listen each and every day. And all you got to do to become an everydayer is subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. And for those of you that aren't quite everydayers, hopefully you'll make the right choice in the end and come around. But Jarvis, as we talk about this Week 9 matchup against the New England Patriots, expectations are not particularly high given the performance of the Falcons the last 2 games. Hopefully they'll get a boost on offense with the healthy returns of players like Michael Penix and Drake London. And we'll see about some of these other players that are a little beat up. How will they perform this week, like Kyle Pitts, Darnell Mooney, Tyler Algier, etc. But when we talk about this Falcons offense, we've talked a lot about this team's need to be physical and, sort of establishing the run. And they're going up against a Patriots defense that is one of the best teams in the NFL when it comes to stopping the run. And I'm curious, do you feel like the Falcons, a key for their success is essentially, seeing that brick wall in front of them potentially and just basically like, screw it, let's just run through that thing? Or do they try to, switch it up? And, for you, what is the thing that you're expecting or hoping to see for this offense this weekend in order for them to get back on track, however you think that is?
I think that in order for this offense to have success, they have to have their guys, right? You have to have wide receiver one. We talked about on the Falcon Squad show about who's the man beaters or who are the man beaters. And I think that, we established the fact last year that Darnell Mooney is that guy, but he did that in a wide receiver 2 world. So he wasn't facing the best corner. So in order for him to be considered a man beater, Drake London has to be in the lineup. And if Drake London isn't in the lineup, you have no man beaters except for Kyle Pitts. And we know, he's been playing well, but he can't be the focus point of an offense. That scares no one. I don't care how fast you can run. You can line him up at the X all you want to and run and go routes. And he might be able to run past some folks, but no one is scared of that at all. So I think in order for them to be able to have success, run through that brick wall, and or come up with that counterpunch that we talked about, also, they have to have their guys back in that lineup. And I think this starts with Michael Penix, one, and then Drake London, making sure he's there because at the end of the day, there's no one that scares me on this offense without Penix and Drake London being in the lineup. So somebody has to be circled in the game plan. And right now, I feel like there's no one right now. If you're talking about going into last week with what the wide receivers, that group that they had last week, ain't nobody scared of that. I don't care who, and it was anyone too, because it was one of the worst defenses in the league, and they out there looking elite, and they only gave up 10 points. So yeah, I think of course you establish yourself, you try to run through that brick wall initially, but you gotta have your guys, lining up at that X and or in the slot and going in motion and all that stuff. Or and the quarterback got to be there as well.
Yeah, we'll see what version of the Falcons offense comes out this week, and obviously we've seen and heard the challenges from this coaching staff, particularly when it comes to that trench play. But at the same time, people are going to need to start challenging some of these skill position players, which are the strength of this team. And at least as far as this podcast goes, we'll get that ball rolling by challenging none other than Mr. Blue Magic himself. Yes, Bijan Robinson is going to have to step up among several others if the Falcons are going to beat the Patriots. And we'll get into all of that, guys, as we continue today's Locked On Falcons. Today's episode is brought to you by Mazda's moving the game forward for those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, they move culture, and they keep the game moving forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward was the first play of the Falcons' second series against the Miami Dolphins, where Kirk Cousins, under center, dropped back for a play action, hit Kyle Pitts on a deep crosser for one of the few explosive plays the Falcons had this past Sunday that helped set up their first field goal. And we hope that play moved the Falcons offense forward. And we hope that it continues to move the Falcons offense forward and evolve it under Zach Robinson with Michael Penix back in the lineup. And when you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there is more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. And today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. Since the NBA season is back, why not celebrate and get in on the action at FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA? The beautiful thing about FanDuel is they're hitting you with this can't-miss offer to celebrate the start of the NBA season, because when you place your first $5 bet as a new customer, if that bet wins, you will get $300 in bonus bets. And FanDuel is going to give you so many ways to win across the app, whether you're betting on the NBA, the NFL. We love a same game parlay. We love a player prop. We love over-unders. All that is available for you. But if you just want to bet straight up spreads, for this upcoming NFL action against the New England Patriots, the Falcons are 5.5-point underdogs. And of course, you can head on over to FanDuel to check out the latest odds for other NFL and NBA teams, right? Again, with that can't miss offer. Your first $5 bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets. So head on over to FanDuel.com to sign up, download the FanDuel app, and play your game with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. And you're not quite seeing these guys live up to that again. Some of that is owed to injuries, especially at the wide receiver position. But, and it's not to sit here and be like, he's the reason why the Falcons lost the game. It was a complete team loss. But, Bijan Robinson has got to step it up. Like, you got this all-pro player the last 2 weeks getting run over by backup linebackers in blitz protection. That's not good enough. You have a guy last week that's, fumbling the football when you have an opportunity to drive down the field and make it a one-score game. And it's not because, Peanut Tillman came across and made a perfect punch. He's jarring the ball out of his own hands by hitting it off his knee. And, it's frustrating. We talk all the time on this podcast about him being, blue magic and walking on water. And, he does do that on a normal basis, but like, it's going to be really hard to win football games if your best guys aren't playing like your best guys, and that needs to change. And yeah, so we'll see on that front.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that has been burning me up a little bit, because when you talk about being a leader, when you talk about being that guy, Mr. Walk on Water, you're going to get all the praises especially coming from me. I know you give him all the praise, like you mentioned on this pod and on the Falcon squad as well. We When 7 is humming, he gonna get all of it. But just when it's bad, like it was last week, when I don't see you stepping up in pass pro like you normally do, like I'm used to seeing you do, like that looked like your rookie year.
Yeah.
That's who he looked like in pass pro last week. And that's not good at all, because I wasn't a big fan at all in that department, that particular department. Like he literally had to be taken off the field if it was 3rd and long, because you're not going to get what you need to get from him. So from that standpoint, for those reasons, yeah, man, he needs to step it up. You got to be good. You got to be able to set your offensive alignment up like you normally do, specifically in that wide zone, because like your center is having little issues getting to that next level. So, hey, if your left guard is not doing what he's supposed to do on those combos, if he's not staying as long as he needs to, so News can get around on that defensive tackle, so Bergeron can actually get to that next level and get to that linebacker, so it can be one-on-one with the safety with 7 right there in the hole. Those things matter, man. So I think that it starts with 7, though. Like he has to do his part if you're going to put a grunt of the blame on your offensive line. So yeah, he has to play better, man. And it starts with him because, man, when you're great, you're expected to be great all the time.
Yeah.
Hurt. And if you ain't hurt, you better be great. So ain't no in between when it comes, especially in the NFL, man, because those guys got to bring it every single Sunday.
Yes. And I know maybe Jarvis and I will differ on this point, but when you play at the level that he usually plays, you're held to a different standard, right?
Sure. Absolutely.
JD Bertrand was not very good last week. Downright terrible, right? I don't hold JD Bertrand to the same standard that I hold Bijan Robinson. Now, JD Bertrand certainly, on the scale of who was a bigger problem for the Falcons last Sunday, JD Bertrand definitely. But at the same time, like JD Bertrand, that scale is going to tip. You need Bijan to kind of tip it back in the favor, a little bit,
just a little bit.
Yeah. Just because you already know the scale's tipping one way, right? That's kind of the point I'm trying to make. And I think you mentioned it with the rookie-ness, and like that was a thing. When his rookie year, there was several games that year with the fumbling where the Falcons would be, in the second half trying to drive to come back in the game, and then Bijan break a run and then fumble the football, and then that would kind of ruin their momentum. And so, I don't want to see rookie year Bijan again. He was a good player then, but not the same level of player that he is today. So
mental lapses aren't acceptable at this point.
Yeah. So
not for this team.
Speaking of JD Bertrand struggling, we'll flip the script, talk about this defense, what needs to change for this defense. Can they slow down Drake May, who's going to present many of the same challenges that this defense faced a couple of weeks ago against Josh Allen? Is the blueprint the same for this Falcons defense? What are going to be some of the keys to be able to slow this young up-and-coming AFC East quarterback like they were able to slow down the other great AFC East quarterback? And we'll get into all of that, guys, as we continue today's Locked On Falcons. So let's be real. Making excuses doesn't solve anything, whether we're talking about excuses on the football field or in the bedroom where you're feeling, hey, I'm just a little stressed, or I'm tired, or, it happens to everyone sometimes. And when it comes to performance in the bedroom, sometimes your body just needs a little extra support. And that's where Rugiet comes in. Rugiet offers a fast-acting doctor-prescribed treatments for ED designed to help you stop making excuses and start making moves. Rugiet makes it easy to get started. You just get connected with a board-certified doctor that's 100% online, no awkward waiting rooms, no in-person appointments. And if prescribed, your treatment is going to ship discreetly straight to your door. So head on over to Rugiet.com at RUGIET.com/LockedOnNFL, and you'll get 15% off your first order. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnNFL. And don't forget to use our code LockedOnNFL so that they know we sent you. Rugiet, stop making excuses and start making moves. So, Jarvis, when we look ahead to this defense, as I mentioned, a lot of the same challenges. facing this version of the Patriots offense that you were going up against the Buffalo Bills. But one of the things we talked about on the Falcons Squad show on Thursday, you don't have quite the same defense heading into this game, in part due to injuries that you had going into that Week 6 game against the Bills. Probably the most central figure is, of course, linebacker Divine Diablo, who was instrumental in part of your strategy to try to keep Josh Allen's running contained. We talked about this on the Falcons Squad, talking about the potential return of Jalen Walker this week, who's been out the last couple of games, and maybe not quite the same player as Divine Diablo, but can do some of that stuff, particularly when it comes to spying the quarterback, that Divine Diablo was able to do successfully earlier in the season. But when you look at this defense overall, what is for you going to be, their biggest challenge facing this Patriots offense? And, what for you is the thing that you want to see them do if this defense is going to get a similar performance as we saw a couple of weeks ago against the Bills?
For me, it starts up front. I hate to sound like Raheem Morris calling out the offensive line and stuff, but I mean, it really didn't. It hit me. It's been kind of in like the bottom of my stomach, but I ain't really talked about it. But just from the young guys, man, are specifically Brandon Dorless and James Pierce Jr., guys who we were having conversations about to start the season. We were like, oh, okay. All right. Brandon Dorless had an excellent training camp. James Pierce Jr. had a doggone noisy / good camp, right? When it comes to just creating havoc, causing havoc, everybody, their names being in a lot of people's mouths. And that has just gone down ever since the season has started. And I think that when you go back to that first game, and we were talking about even in a loss against a divisional opponent, I was saying, I know you were saying, man, this team looks different. This defense looks different. It looks different. Why? Because guys getting off the ball, they're getting into the backfield. They are meeting these offensive linemen on the other side of the football when that ball is snapped. Like, that's the stuff that has been missing in these past couple of games. What I don't like, these guys two-gapping. Because the main reason why I don't like seeing these guys two-gap, they ain't got enough rocks in their pocket, man. Ain't no Gilbert Browns on this team. Ain't no Grady Jacksons on this team. Ain't no Jonathan Babineaux on this team. Like, I know Ruka Roro would probably love to be in that conversation with a guy like Jonathan Babineaux, but he ain't there yet. And I don't know if he's going to get there. So these guys got to be put into position to get through one gap. Get off your block, get to your old gap, and make a play, man. Find the football. So I'm charging Brandon Dorless, James Pierce Jr. I like what D.O. been doing, David Onyemata. I like what those guys, I like what he's been doing. These young pups got to get along, come on with the OG. And man, can we figure out a way to get Zach Harrison back on the field? Because if we really talking about it, just from a defensive lineman standpoint, who's been the most consistent throughout this year? It's been 96. Zach Harrison. I make a good case. Zach Harrison has been the most consistent defensive lineman, hand in the dirt guy in a Falcons uniform in 2025. So yeah, he's a guy that's not talked about enough as far as coming back. So if Zach Harrison can come back, I think he can be that guy to lead that charge from the young guy standpoint. But otherwise, if he's not, man, these guys got to play better, man. They got to play better, because trying to get off the ball and two gap and hold up the offensive line and see what's going on and then get off and make a tackle, that's not going to work. It's not going to work for them. It's not.
Yeah. I can think of plays that I broke down in the extended all 22 review, focusing on a certain linebacker that was struggling, but also noticing, guys getting moved from the A gap to the C gap. And it's like,
Talking about washed down, man. It is. Oh, gosh.
That's not good, you know. And
yeah, man. and it's like it's not anything fancy, man. We talking about straight a down block. Like if an offensive lineman come this way on my right shoulder, on left shoulder, depending on how you're looking at it, whatever. If you coming down on my right shoulder, man, I'm fighting over the top of that block. I'm not going upfield because guess what? You're taking yourself out of the play. You're doing exactly what they want you to do. If the offensive lineman come down, man, you swimming over the top. You're trying to fight over the top because that's where the ball going. The offensive lineman gonna tell you where the ball going every time. Wherever his butt is, that's where it's going. So you fight towards that. Pause. You know what I mean? So I think that it's just stuff like that, man. That's what gets me going, and that's why a lot of times when I watch film, I kind of, I have to be in my little quiet place because my wife can hear me. She be like, Jarvis, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, no, I'm not. I'm not okay because I'm watching defensive linemen get their butts whooped, and I don't like that.
Yeah.
I know these guys are better than that. It'll be a difference is I looked at it. I'm like, oh, okay. If it was like number 40, like watching number 40, I know what I'm gonna get for number 40.
Yeah,
he ain't gonna get no better. Like he ain't gonna get that much better. Let me say that much.
Yeah.
So these guys aren't on that level. That's the good thing. That's the hope. That's the light that we have with these defensive linemen. So I've seen these guys play. I've seen these guys shoot. Brandon Doyle last week, he was making plays. But it was just too late. It was too late at that point. So I need that in the first quarter. I need that getting off blocks, getting in the backfield and causing havoc. And, that's the only way these boys going to make a difference or look any different than they did last week.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it. Those first two games, they did an excellent job controlling the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, man.
And, I remember one of the questions I had was like, well, are they benefiting from no Tristan Wirfs and no Christian Darrisaw? And it seemed like in the moment they were, and then, they didn't dominate the Carolina game to the same degree. But, they sort of bounced back the next couple of weeks. And now it feels like, now that we have 7 games and it's like, yeah, are they just kind of beating up on backup offensive linemen when you look at the bigger picture sort of conversation? And you have this Patriots offensive line that's playing well. You have the Colts coming up, and you want to I haven't done a deep dive in the film study yet, Jarvis, but just a couple of things I've seen. Like if you want to see an offensive line kicking some butt, like just go watch some Colts film this season. So it is one of those things where like this defensive line, especially given a lot of the injuries that the Falcons are accumulating in the back seven, it's like, again, talking about the scales, you got to compensate a little bit because some of these other areas of weakness, and this is supposed to be a strength of your team. And I think you're right with Zach Harrison. I think he's been very underrated in terms of his impact for this defense, both in the pass and as a run defender. And so they can get him back, as well as Jalen Walker, and what happens with Leonard Floyd, and it's Billy Bowman coming back, and Jesse Bates. Is like, so we talked about the battle for attrition on defense, earlier this season with the early bye. They're experiencing that, but like that's not going to be an excuse, because at the end of the day, you got to step up and perform well. And I think this defense is much more capable than what they've shown the last couple of weeks. But this is a game where like everybody needs to get challenged, right? Everybody has got to step it up. If this team is going to end this 2-game, slide, and they didn't do it against the Dolphins. That was their easiest competition in this stretch. Yep. And it's going to get harder against these upcoming opponents is kind of the point. So you got to step it up. You can't just be like, oh, well, it'll be fine. We'll figure it out. And it's like, y'all gotta step it up, but we'll see.
Yeah, man. That's the thing, man. I understand everyone's anger and angst towards Raheem Morris. They want to get him fired. They all want for blood. Fire Zach Robinson. Yeah, man. Do y'all understand that it might get worse if that happened? You talking about players checking out, because there are going to be guys that are going to check out, and it might be guys that you might not expect. So my whole thing is what you would like if you want this team to have a sensible conversation about playing in the postseason. Like, Raw got to figure it out. Zach got to figure it out. And these guys got to play better, man. I mean, I know people want to fire the coaches all the time, and that's the first thing they go to, man. But look at the tape, man. We just talked about Bijan Robinson, like specific plays where this man is not being himself. We talked about, Elijah Wilkinson being the backup to the backup. Initially was straight, but now, and Storm Norton gonna be healthy, and Raheem Morris talking about, oh yeah, competition. No, the man is going to start. If he's healthy enough to play, he's going to start. So yeah, I think that, I get it. I understand why you're angry, but the players gotta play too, man. They get a check just like everybody else, man. It's not just on the coach. I promise you.
Yes, Jarvis, I think that makes an excellent point. I want to add to that conversation, but I also want to, let's talk about Rich McKay or whatever, because for some reason Rich McKay is still relevant to the Atlanta Falcons in 2025. But that whole notion of the blame game, I do think is worthy of a deeper discussion, and we'll get into that along with whatever's going on with Rich McKay as we wrap up today's Locked On Falcons. Change of plans. We will be moving that conversation about Rich McKay and the blame game, and we'll also get into if you've been wondering, as so many Falcon fans have, why have I been as critical of Zach Robinson this season as I was this past offseason? Hopefully that will become clearer. Jarvis and I did have that conversation, but it basically went very long. And so we decided, hey, let's just make this a full episode by itself. So kind of a 2-part conversation. You'll get that if you're checking us out on YouTube a Friday morning on YouTube. And of course, the audio listeners will also get that on Friday, probably for your afternoon commutes. So continue to make Locked On Falcons your first listen to get that bonus episode that you can check out, while you're taking the kids out to trick or treat on Halloween or whatever you decide to do Friday, to get you guys geared up for this Week 9 matchup against the New England Patriots. And in the meantime, you can check out Locked On NFL, 2 shows daily that will get you geared up with all of the rest of the Week 9 action that won't be happening in Foxborough, Massachusetts. It is all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.